Hello and welcome to RE7 Talks. Today with Henry McIntosh. Welcome, Henry. How are you?
Hey, yeah, I'm all good, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right. So tell us a bit about yourself because lots of our subscribers and viewers today might not know you. So who are you and what are you doing here in my podcast show?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it might seem quite random because I run a UK-based marketing agency, have done
Mhm.
since 2016. So we've been going nearly 8 years now. But in terms of coming on the podcast, really, at the moment, what we're trying to do is build my personal brand. So we do it for our clients. We try and build their personal brands. We know podcasts are a great way to do
Mhm.
that. So if I'm being completely honest and upfront, we go and we look to book podcasts that I can speak on and tell people about my journey. And I think, getting to this point as well in terms of where I've come from, it's not been very linear at all. So it's not been very straightforward. I mean, I went to university, did history and politics, for example. So it's kind of
Okay.
like
Has
how
nothing to do with marketing.
no, it's quite weird, right? And the one thing it gave me was I had to write a lot of essays, and I've always been into writing.
Uh-huh.
So prior to going to university, I wanted to be a screenwriter, and my parents were like, "You'll never get a job, blah blah blah. Go and do history and politics." So in the end, I relented. I said, "You know what? I'll go and do history and politics." And I got really lucky, and I got a couple of my essays published. So
Nice. Congrats.
I yeah, I mean nothing special, but
Mhm.
it helped me go out and get a job. And the first job I got was copywriting. So I went to and worked for a luxury watch retailer. I was working in London. The problem with it was I had all this responsibility and I was writing articles for national publications for
Mhm.
them that they paid a lot of money for. And I was earning £8 an hour to do this, which in central London doesn't go very far.
How long
Um,
is this ago? What time ago when
yeah,
was this?
so this is over a decade ago now. So we're
No, but
talking,
still was really low. I mean, £8.
yeah.
I mean, this is
So
this
yeah,
is really low.
yeah. To put it into perspective, to get the train in to work was a third of my salary every week.
Wow.
So what that does is it creates a like necessity point. I was like, all my friends were earning a lot more money, doing a lot cooler stuff than I was.
Yeah.
Um, but the good thing about being a writer is you can do freelance. So what I started doing was building up my freelance and building up my clients that way. So I ended up working with weird and random different businesses, right? Doing freelance writing from charities to jewelry brands to like discount style stores and e-commerce stores and stuff like that. And over time, what happened was one of my articles got picked up by a magazine. So
Mhm.
then I became a journalist, or journalist in terms of, and it was a luxury publication. So got really lucky. I just got flown around the world, and I got to write articles like all expenses paid trips to Iceland and St. Lucia and Israel and places like that.
Mhm.
And
Nice.
all I had to do was write these articles. But I also built up clients from there. So one of the trips was to Poland with Belvedere, the vodka.
Mhm.
And I wrote an article, and Belvedere wanted to buy the article that I'd written to use in their own stuff.
And how did they find about it? I mean, how do I have to imagine? So you go there, you write this
Mhm.
article, and then you go to the publisher, or how do they find you that they want to buy this article?
Yeah, so at the time I was contracted to a certain magazine called Luxurious Magazine. So
Mhm.
PRs would come to the magazine and they'd say, "Hey, here's our press release, about this restaurant, this vodka, this brand. Would one of your journalists be
Mhm.
interested?" And then the press releases would get distributed, but we'd get hundreds of press releases, right? And this is what's so hard when you're starting out and you really need a point of difference because brands like Belvedere, you're going to their household name, you're going to respond to it, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they took me on an all expenses paid trip through Poland. So we stayed in the Bristol in Warsaw. We drank a lot of vodka in different formats.
Can you
So
imagine?
my memory is a little bit hazy, but also a great brand, right? And when we got back, we published the article in print and digital. So these magazines got put in private jets and five-star hotels and stuff like that. They also had a big presence online. And then Belvedere contacted me and asked me to do some freelance work. So I ended up writing an advertorial for them in a national newspaper in the UK and writing one of their adverts.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I was working for a web design company and I was writing their blog. And it was about a time where blogging was still, it was kind of the podcasting, right, back in the
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
right? And we managed to win a national award for the blog. So we focused on lead generation, digital stuff. And after we won the award, we sat down and we said, we should probably turn this service into a business. And
Mhm.
from there, 2112 was born, which is the current agency I work with. And 2112 started as an agency for luxury brands. And
Mhm.
what we found was that was a really nice point of difference for a time. But over time, we started getting offered different projects which weren't in luxury, but they were kind of too lucrative to turn down. So we
Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of ruined our own niche and went after these projects, which led to a time, right, where we weren't sure what our proposition was, in all honesty.
Mhm.
And what we've so we went through a repositioning recently, and we looked at sort of what makes us different, what makes us unique, which brings us to today, which is where we call ourselves the
Yeah.
commercial collaborations agency.
Nice. I mean, it sounds really interesting. When did you exactly start? I mean, when did you make this transition from being like this freelance journalist to realizing, I mean, there is some business to do. I should set up a business. What year was it when you started your business?
Yeah, so it was back in 2016, but it wasn't straightforward. So it wasn't like I suddenly went, I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm not a freelance
Mhm.
copywriter. I'm now a business owner. What happened was I took some of my clients that I was freelancing with and I brought them into the business. But actually, to begin with, as you know, it's super hard to create a business. That
Oh yeah, tell me. I mean, I have now RE7 is now the third business exactly, and I know how it is. I mean, long working hours and start with working with people and partners that you can rely on. I mean, there are so much things that you have to face.
Yeah, and I think at the start, and also I was 24 years old when I started 2112, so I was a little bit naive, and I didn't realize how long everything you've just said about finding the right partners, hiring a really good team.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how hard that was, and also didn't realize how long it would take. And in terms of the transition going from freelancer to agency owner,
Hmm.
what I found was I had to juggle a lot of different things. So I had to keep freelance clients who didn't want to have an agency. That even though the agency was just me and a friend at the time,
Yeah.
they still wanted to be freelance clients. So I had this weird time where I was still a journalist, I was a freelance copywriter, and I was an agency owner. And you can't be all of those things, right? But I had to pay the bills, so I needed to be those things.
I,
But
I can fully understand you. I mean, for me it was almost the same. As I told you before, when we were preparing now for this podcast, I worked first as a Telekom, Deutsche Telekom. So I had this Deutsche Telekom. I was doing some studying, bachelor. I did my bachelor at that time, and I started with the agency. So I don't know, I had three roles to play, and with all getting along and somehow to fulfill all these roles, and it's like it's crazy. I mean, it's on one side it's really interesting and engaging, but on the other side it's really exhausting and you need to focus on each of the things. And I remember I was so exhausted from this at the end of the day, because it's like you play different roles, and you have to be fully focused in order to do your job.
Yeah, and I think that's so true. I think you can't be all things to all men, right? And that point of focus, I
Yeah.
found that anytime I've deviated from the core vision of the business, we've suffered. So, it's whether you've tried to pursue a different business opportunity or you've tried to juggle freelance clients and journal, like jetting off
Hmm.
around the world when you're trying to run an agency. It doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't actually work. And I think the problem you've got nowadays is you look at LinkedIn, you look at Twitter, and you see these people who are super successful, and you're seeing, you know, 9 years of hard work, right? That they've got to a point where a team probably even writes their LinkedIn content, right?
Yeah.
And you see their world through rose-tinted glasses. What you often don't see is the struggle that it took to get there. And I think the most successful people I know are laser focused. They are so focused on the thing that they're good at, and they just execute that. And that transition was hard because I thought I could juggle it, and in all honesty, I couldn't really. And I had to learn that the hard way, and something had to give. And my agency really kicked off when I invested all my time, all my energy into my agency.
What time was it? Which year are we now? I mean, when you learned
Yeah.
this the hard way, when was it, or when do you think that you changed this and you felt that finally you were getting some traction and it was growing?
It's a great question. I'd struggle to put a specific date on it, but I think the realization came before the action. So I realized this was the case, but didn't want to take action, or thought I
Mhm.
was not above it, but thought I could get away with it, and I couldn't. So I think it probably took me a few years, probably took me 2-3 years to really transition and give up, the safety of those other
Mhm.
opportunities, right? Because they were easy. Going from having someone who's kind of a surefire thing paying you, and
Yeah.
it's regular, it's consistent, into an agency where your clients can quit, you know, at any time they want, and you don't have enough clients to really create that sustainable model.
Yeah.
It's daunting, right? But I
I
think,
I Yeah, I mean, sorry, you
no,
continue,
go on.
please. I wanted to say, I mean, it was for me the same. I mean, first you need to get the money into the company
Yeah,
in order to get to live from it. I mean, to pay the rent, to get your food, and so on. So you have to take mainly the jobs that come into your business. And of course, when somebody says, "Hey, I'm doing automotive, you haven't done automotive," but you will say, yeah, sure, I can do this because I mean, this
yeah,
customer pays you. And then it's really hard to be laser focused or to go in your niche if you don't get somebody from your niche.
yeah. Yeah, it's so familiar what you're saying, because we've had projects where, to be honest, we didn't quite understand the product or the service. We
Mhm.
were kind of like, okay, a startup, they've got money, they must know what they're doing, but quite often they don't have a clue, or more to the point, they're not marketers. So the products might be great, but they actually haven't found a good point of difference in the market. So their product might be better than the competitors, but it's not different enough. And the competitor's marketing machine is far more successful, far more well oiled.
Yeah.
And what we found was, when we took on these projects, the learning curve was so steep, and people want results instantly. So it puts you under instant pressure, right? Soon as you sign a client, I always find I never really celebrate selling to a client, because what comes next is you've got to deliver. And
Yeah.
if you don't deliver, you're out the door, right? Quicker than you can blink. So it's always kind of a daunting prospect. You've sold, and over time, I think the only way to combat that is to find a niche. And the niche doesn't necessarily have to mean industry, but it might be a certain process, a certain philosophy that you
Yeah.
apply, which is repeatable, right? That makes it kind of, they call it over here the sausage factory, right? You're kind of creating the same thing
Yeah.
over and over again, which there's a truth to it in marketing as well, that stick to what you're good at, because we all know agencies who kind of say they can do everything,
Yeah.
and some of them can, but smaller agencies are much better, I tend to find, when they're specialists.
Yes, I agree with you. And I mean, can you elaborate a bit more on your agency? What exactly does your agency do? What is your positioning to understand better? Because you said already something about now with the campaigns to deliver results. So, what are the services that you offer, and what is your proposition with your agency?
Yeah, for sure. So, in terms of our proposition, we call ourselves the
Hmm.
Commercial Collaborations Agency. So, we
Okay.
focus on partnership marketing specifically.
Hmm.
And with partnership marketing, what we look at is we actually break it into three different sections. And the three different sections, we've kind of our internal dialogue, basically. So we call the first one value exchange. And a value
Hmm.
exchange is where we take a client and we find complementary but non-competitive businesses that we can partner them with for in a referral partnership or in an ongoing marketing
Okay.
activity, right? The second one is what we call sponsored partnerships. So we'll take a startup or an unheard of brand and we'll partner them with a bigger brand or a household name who has access to their ideal target market. Why we call it sponsored is because the smaller brand has to pay the bigger brand, because the bigger brand, there's nothing in it for them. In a value
Normally
exchange,
not.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's win-win. So what we do is we structure what the commercials look like of that deal.
Hmm.
We partner them up. We design the campaign to drive as much value as we can for the client. Um, but why it works so well is because you, by virtue of association with this household name or bigger brand, your client's gaining instant know, like, trust within a mature audience, as it were. So you're able to drive that and utilize that know, like, trust by virtue of association, right? So we tend to find that works incredibly well to gain traction quickly, whether you're a startup or
Hmm.
you're launching a new product or service in a different market.
And is it defined on a specific niche where the company can come from, or can I come as any company? Like I'm, for example, I have sport nutrition. I want to push this new sport nutrition that I have, this new protein, which is fully, I don't know, has lots of protein and is the best on the market, high quality stuff. So how would I be a customer for you? Would I be interested for you when I'm saying, hey, I'm looking for strong partners? Henry, can you pick me up with somebody of them?
Yeah, for sure. So we are completely industry agnostic. So we can work with virtually anyone. So in terms of our current client base, we've got sporting bodies, we've got engineering firms. We do a lot of work in financial services, so wealth management, mortgage
Hmm.
brokers, private equity. We do work in engineering and technology as well, and even learning and development. So we've got all these broad clients. And
Hmm.
what's quite strange is our strategy that we apply and our process can be the same for an engineering firm as it is for, say, a law firm or even a completely different firm again. But obviously the tactics within it might differ, and the content that we deliver will differ. So I'll give you a few examples. So one of our clients is a learning and development company. They
Hmm.
provide gamified learning experiences to enterprise level companies. So
Hmm.
their clients, people like AstraZeneca, PepsiCo, and they came to us and they said, we need a more predictable form of lead generation. And
Hmm.
their lead generation was all based on events. And when they came to us, it was March 2020, heading straight into the pandemic. So events were either going virtual or they'd been cancelled. And this was compounded by the fact that there were only 3 or 4 relevant industry events every year for them. So that was quite like a scarce approach to lead gen, right? They were really reliant on referrals. So
Yeah.
what we did with them was we looked at who had access to their ideal target market, which was learning and development directors at enterprise level companies. And we found some coaching consultancies and we did some webinars with them. But
Mhm.
what we also realized was their greatest asset was actually their clients. So their clients were people like the learning and development directors at AstraZeneca and PepsiCo, right? And
Mhm.
we designed a series of expert panel webinars, which were invitation only, that featured these individuals. So we piggybacked on the know, like, trust these individuals had within their niche. And what you find is most people have a lot of peers in their network. So my LinkedIn, right, I have loads of marketing agencies. Some of them are good referral partners. Some of them I can't work with, but
Mhm.
we like each other because we understand each other, but we'll never do any work. And the same is true across industries. So we designed these webinars. What we started doing as well was, because all of the participants were ideal target market, we started surveying them and we started
Mhm.
asking them questions post the webinar. And we gained a lot of data and a lot of insight that we could use across our clients' channels. So across LinkedIn, across newsletters,
Yeah.
across blogs, stuff like that. And that generated leads in itself. But what we did after a year of this activity was we turned all these insights into an original 30-page white paper. And we took this out using cold outreach and we distributed it across, to their ideal audience. And we ended up with leads at companies like IBM, Deloitte, Danone, Just Eat, Microsoft, places like that. So ideal
Mhm.
target market. But the best thing about it was, and this case stays on our website, but in that year, they enjoyed 80% increase in sales from the previous
Wow.
year.
Wow.
Now, we were their only marketing function, and I'm not saying it was all down to us. They had a new CEO. He was very dynamic and he
Mhm.
really delivered the goods, but we were a big part of that. So we would call that a value exchange because it was a non-financial collaboration, right, between
Yeah.
profitability of the client and their clients, right? And their clients, it was good for their personal brand, much like me doing this podcast, right? Um, and then if you take a sponsored uh, collaboration, we built a new mortgage brand in the UK called
Mhm.
FOMO Mortgages, and FOMO had no data to its name, and they wanted to gain traction quickly.
Mhm.
So we did all the usual stuff, like, we built a nice website, we built a nice brand, and
Yeah.
we did funnels through Facebook and Google. But the best thing we did was we partnered them with lastminute.com, which is a really well-known travel brand in the UK. And they have over 1 million people in their email database. Now, we had to pay lastminute.com for the
Mhm.
collaboration, but what we were able to do was negotiate a good fee with them, structure how the campaign looked. And what we did was we created a competition. But as you know, competition data can be rubbish, right? Because no one really
Yeah.
cares about the
Yeah.
brand, do they? They just enter to win the prize. So what we did was we made every entrant complete a quiz. And the quiz asks them things like, are you a homeowner? If you are a homeowner, when does the initial term on your mortgage end? So when's it due for renewal? Do you have life insurance? If you're not a homeowner, do you intend to buy? If so, when? And you use conditional logic, and there were
Mhm.
sort of 5 questions depending on what route you went. And we got 10,000 entrants in just over a month.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we were able to then segment that data based on their answers. We generated over 100 sales qualified leads into the business off the bat. And then what we did was we nurtured those 10,000 individuals with email communications. And we still email them to this day, which is about 18 months ago now. We ran this competition.
Wow.
But
And just to ask you a bit more, this last minute. So last minute is traveling. The other thing is mortgage. So how I still didn't get the idea. So how did you bring these together? So was it then a newsletter made by Last Minute, or Last Minute was like, hey, I have these people that said, hey, you can give my data to partners of us, and then we can send them an email. So how did it actually work? So this is not clear for me. Can you tell me a bit more in detail about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we negotiated the structure with lastminute.com, we bought certain pieces of media. So we bought an email send out to a certain segment of their database. So I think we sent out to, I want to say something like 150,000 subscribers, for example, right? But what we also did was we bought we got a landing page on their website that was kind of, I think it was semi-hidden, and because they didn't obviously want it as part of the wide site, but we got social media posts as well. And I think anyone who's listening who's trying to structure a partnership, you've got to set expectations up front, and you've got to negotiate hard, right? Because actually, getting like an extra social media post is easily done for them.
Yeah.
But you can, if you negotiate for a little bit more, it can drive phenomenal results, because as we know, people need to see it a few times before they take action. So we tried to go as far and wide across lastminute.com's channels as possible. So we had, we thought, well, if we hit them with an email, which drove the best results, by the way, the email was the best, but then social media also works. And you might have seen the email not take an action, but then seen the social media post and gone, well, I might as well enter. So kind of that's how we set it up.
What tool did you use for the email marketing?
So it was actually sent by them.
So you just told them, here, this is the content, please make it nice, and they use their tool. Okay.
Yeah, so we wrote the content. So they gave us the parameters. They said, here, here's the image sizes, here's the amount of copy we allow.
Yeah.
Obviously, they had to sign off on the copy, so we didn't, do anything that disrupted their brand, right? Because the other thing with partnerships is they're putting their reputation on the line, so they want to be sure that it's correct. But I think with that one, they said the open rate was really high, because the other thing with email marketing, right, is being careful with what words you use. So if you use words like competition or win or money, you're much more likely to end up in the spam box, right? So we were quite careful, and what we gave away was an all-inclusive holiday to Greece, right? So British people love going to Greece. So we
also
knew
the Romanians, by the way. I also explored it last year. Was the first time in Greece, and Romanians love to go there because it's just one hour to fly, and some from Romania they drive even, because it's just 8 to 10 hours drive, so you can even reach it with the car. But that's a nice idea, and it's kind of like influencer marketing, but the influencer in this way is the company. So you have much more trust because you know this big brand, and this big brand can help you like a trustee. So it's between the customer and your brand, and they vouch for you that you are trustworthy brand, even though they haven't heard of you, but it's all going over Last Minute. So this mortgage company needs to be trustworthy because Last Minute was doing a post about them. The email came over them. So a really, really nice and innovative idea from my point of view.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on. It's really interesting, the influencer marketing piece, because someone recently said to me, well, could you do influencer marketing in B2B? And I was kind of like, you kind of could, but if you take a B2C influencer, they can sell almost anything, right? Kim Kardashian can, well, she shouldn't be selling financial products, but she tries to, and then cars and beauty and stuff. But in B2B, your influencers are very specific, right?
Yeah.
And they either share your target market, or they're an influencer within a certain niche, which makes it a lot more siloed. So I think loads of brands. So to go back to the protein idea, there's so many different avenues to explore without using influencers, because our experience with influencers, and we've dabbled in it, is that it's very expensive, and you don't have much creative control over what
Yeah.
they put out, and they charge a lot. I think that they offer more value than they do in terms of the purchase power of over individuals. So you're right. We find companies more, you build more trust through that relationship.
Mhm.
And look, I'm not knocking influencer marketing because there are some great agencies and they make it work.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree with you. But on the other side, I mean, I was watching the last time Murder in the Building. Was googling Selena Gomez, and she earns over 1 million for one post.
Yeah,
And all good about this. I mean, with the influencer marketing, but our agency, we also not doing influencer marketing because I have like with the sustainability, I have my
okay.
doubts because an influencer can destroy their image in a second. They just say something, the media takes it, and then the whole thing is destroyed. And all the brands that you vouch for, they have to distance themselves. I mean, Kanye West and Adidas, everybody know about this.
Yeah, yeah,
And you can lose a lot of money with this. So I mean, it has its upsides and downsides, and I still believe. I mean, with influencer marketing, you can reach a lot of people, but there are also really big risks. You can write this in the contract, of course, that if something happens and so on. But when it happened and the media gets heard of it, you cannot just bury it
yeah,
down. I mean,
yeah,
it's going out there and it will have some bad influence and negative PR on your brand. Of course, with the companies can be the same, but normally the companies, they have a compliance department and so on, and they take care that everything is compliant. So I like the idea. I mean, I like this approach that your company is doing. I haven't heard of it before from a company doing this. Um, but as I can see, it really works out. And what I understood, you need to have a really great and big network in order to provide the service. So I mean, your freelance journalist journey helped you probably to create these important connections for this network, I guess.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a really interesting point. I think network definitely helps. So actually, lastminute.com came from Chloe, who's a member of the team, attending a
Hmm.
networking event, and she met uh, a marketing manager at lastminute.com, who when they got talking, they decided there were synergies, and from there the kind of the collaboration was born. So it's also the point that you don't need a big network to start. You can constantly be building your network, right? So
Hmm.
something for me is constantly going out there, but it's important to be in the right rooms, right? I think a lot, you end up going to a lot of networking events and you think, why are you in this room? You know, you're a B2C brand
Oh my
in
god.
a sea of B2B
Yes.
businesses, and you think that there are better rooms for you to be in. So you get better at where to spend your time, who to spend your time with, who can actually deliver as well. So network is super important. And you're right. I think the where I've come from has helped, but I think anyone
Hmm.
can go out there and build a really good network if they're personable and they deliver
I
what they say they're going to do.
I fully agree. I mean, for myself, I don't speak so well Romanian. I mean, I can have a basic conversation, but I'm not fluent or something. And even when I came to Romania, I went, for example, to Chamber of Commerce, Germany, Romania, because they spoke mainly German or English. So I was able even to connect there with people in Romania, with businesses in Romania, and it helped me to build a network. So even though if I'm not speaking, or if a viewer of us is not speaking the language, lives in these countries, there are always some opportunities where you can get somewhere where you are able to build a network, to connect with some. But on the other side, what you mentioned before with these, I was at lots of network events where I was like, who am I and what I'm doing here?
Yeah,
This is ridiculous. I mean, like, what is this? Is this a Tupperware party or things like this? And I mean, when you are there, then just say, "Hey, I'm enjoying it. Um, just to meet some people, but probably you won't find your target group there. But maybe you met interesting people that know other people that
Yeah.
can get you in contact is. So I totally get what you mentioned with these networking events. So
Yeah.
you have to be really selective and to think before you go there. Is it worth it? What is the goal? What do I want to get out? For example, to some events, I'm just going there because I'm meeting friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just meeting friends. I'm discussing with them. I don't expect to make business with them, but these long-term relationship help you. That, for example, then after 2 3 weeks, the connection that I met is calling me and said, "Hey, I have a friend. He's looking for a marketing agency. Might be interested for you." So it's just a multiplicator for you, not directly brings you as a client, but he knows others that might be interested in marketing, and then he can mention your name, and there you have a new client.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're spot on that. I think if you go into a networking event or any business event with the notion that you're going to sell to people, you're going in with
Yeah,
the wrong mindset, because you're going to put people off. People don't want to be sold to straight away. You need to go in and listen and find out more about people. And you're spot on. You're not necessarily being in the right room doesn't necessarily mean being in a room filled with your target market. It might mean being in a room with people who also supply your target market or who know people in your target market. And you never know who people know. So I'm never like, I won't go to that because, it sounds useless. But I think you can be a bit selective, right? And you can, make an educated guess at whether you're going to be relevant to the people in the room. Can you actually provide value in that room, or are you just there to sell to people? And in that
I
case, you're going
fully
to annoy people,
yeah.
you know?
I fully agree. This is great what you mentioned. Can I bring value to this group? I mean, this is a great point that you just made when you go to this group, because I don't like it when you go there and somebody comes before they introduce yourself, they hand you already the business card.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I mean, this is no added value. This is just yeah, I did my job. Here you go. We will never hear again, but I got rid of my business
yeah,
card. So um with this added value, I mean, having interesting conversations and building connections. I mean, that I'm saying at the end of the conversation, hey, Henry is a really cool guy. I find fascinating what he knows, what he does, and I really remember him. And when something comes up, I will let him know. I have his contacts now, and was awesome to meet a person like this. This is much better than just, hey, here's the business card. We do this, this, and this. Have a nice evening. Okay.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think, we've all been there where someone's just talked at us, right? And
Yeah.
and never asks a question. I think it's always important to be ask questions, but also be actively listening. So, you know, not just waiting to speak next. You're actually taking in what they're telling you, and coming back with something relevant, right? Which, but I think the roadblock for a lot of people is that networking is nerve wracking. And don't get me wrong, when I first went networking, I've never particularly loved it because I did in the past, especially find it nerve wracking, right? Like,
Yeah.
what do I say? What do I do? Um, but I think you just need to put yourself in those scenarios, right, and just go for it and see what
And I
happens.
think also, I think it's also a bit, I mean, I remember when I was first at the event, I was alone. I mean, I know nobody in this room to make the first step and to speak someone. So I think this is also a valuable lesson in order to learn more how to overcome this kind of like fear, in order to step in this room, to go to a party where you don't know anybody and you feel kind of like a stranger because lots of people are talking, and then somehow to go there and talk to people and get to know each other. I mean, for me, that was, I remember when I started here, I mean, in 2015. end of 2015, and I went to these events. I didn't know anybody. Of course, some were speaking German, so you're a bit more familiar with them. But it's still like what to talk with them. How do you introduce yourself when you're going there? I mean, it helps you a lot in order to strengthen your way of selling yourself and connect with people.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think over time you learn, simple things that I've been taught over the years, like, rather than going in and saying, "Hey, I'm a mortgage broker," you tell people the outcome of what you do. I help people get a better deal on their mortgages or something like that. Making it a little bit more interesting and giving them the opportunity to ask the next question, right? Because if I go in and
Yeah.
say, "Yeah, I run a marketing agency," they go, "Okay, I don't really know what question to ask next." But if you go in and you say, "Hey, I run a commercial collaborations agency," they go, "What is that?" And it kind of allows you to naturally start a conversation, right?
Yeah.
So there
Yeah.
are little things like that on there, but it's super daunting. And there have been plenty of times where I've introduced myself and thought, "Wow, I've just haven't made any sense whatsoever." So I think we're all in the same boat, aren't we?
Yeah, but I think you learn a lot, and what you mentioned, that to make yourself interesting is also something that helps you in order to that people are curious, they ask you question, and you can speak about yourself. So you just make yourself interesting. You are not this dull, boring guy that I just met before. No, you have this. I forgot the name again. But you have this, and I want to know what are you doing actually. You can explain me, you can give me examples and so on, and that makes you interesting. You're not like the other people in this room.
Yeah, for sure, and it makes you memorable. I mean, I used to be part of a networking group, and I always remember an accountant turned up, and at the start of this networking group, you're all sat around a table. There were about,
Hmm.
I want to say, about 25 business owners in the room, and you have to
Hmm.
stand up and you have to introduce yourself for 60 seconds.
Is it this BNI chapter?
It's not, but it's similar.
Ah,
It's very
okay.
similar. Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
BNI, you do exactly the same thing. You stand up, you
Yeah,
deliver a 6 second pitch, and there's quite a skill to that, right? In terms of what
for
you
sure.
say and how you do it. Don't tell people what you do. Tell them the outcomes. Give them case studies, things like that. But this accountant stood up and he sung his intro. He just started singing, and I was pretty new to networking at this point. I was very nervous about my 6 seconds. And normally, when you're that nervous, you can't concentrate on what anyone else is saying,
Yeah.
which is kind of the irony, right? Because no one else is listening to you anyway. But
Yeah.
this guy kind of captivated me. He also put me at ease because I was like, everyone just started laughing. He wasn't doing it because he thought he had a pretty good voice, to be fair, but it was more.
At least that, so it wasn't bad for your ears.
Yeah, for sure. But it was more about breaking the ice. And,
Yeah.
you could tell he'd been networking for years. He was there to have a bit of fun. It wasn't there to be, super serious thing. And I think that's important to remember is go in, be yourself, make other people feel comfortable, and you've won it basically. Because I always remember him, always.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of this, but it's something memorable. So
Yeah.
you will call this even in 5 or 10 years. You can tell the story, and you have something to say, and you still remember this guy was an accountant.
Yeah. And
And I mean, for an accountant, really creative. I wouldn't expect that an accountant is singing the
yeah.
presentation. If it would have been a marketing agency, I would have said, yes, marketing guy, he's really creative. But an accountant, I mean, this is kind of like really, I mean, I wouldn't expect this from an
Yeah,
accountant.
for sure. And that's part of the battle, isn't it?
Mm.
It's, doing something different and doing something different to what everyone else does because, you know, probably hundreds of accountants have been through that room, but none of them have left the impression he did. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to sing, But I've seen people bring props in and do things like that, and just having that point of difference in every aspect of your business is powerful,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, I fully agree. I wanted to come back. You mentioned when you mentioned regarding the last minute cooperation that one of your employees got in contact with them. So, how big is your team? How are you guys working? Are you working in an office? Are you working remotely? Can you tell me a bit more? How are you managing your team?
Yeah, for sure. So we are hybrid. So at the moment, I'm sat in a
Oh,
co-working space. I'm in a little phone booth, as you can see,
hmm.
in London, in Charing Cross. So we're a team of five, soon to be six. But half my team are based in London, and then half of us are
Hmm.
just 45 minutes outside London. So the model we use is when we went into COVID, we had an office, and it was a very nice
Yeah,
office on a golf course. And for 6 months, no one stepped foot in it, and we're still paying for it. And I tell you, that is painful, right? When you're like,
I fully agree.
yeah, you're just like, there's got to be a better way. And what COVID allowed us to do is go, look, let's try going remote. And actually, Chloe, who was the one who brokered the lastminute.com deal, she wanted to move to London from
Yeah.
the town we're from. And I said, you know what, go for it. Let's try being a remote agency.
Hmm.
So for a time we were remote. And what we've moved towards is this hybrid model. So we have a co-working space here. We have a co-working space back in our hometown. And basically we work out of London sometimes we meet up once a fortnight in London and once a fortnight back in our hometown. But they have membership, so they can come in as and when they want. So different people work together in different locations. Every
Hmm.
week we start with a team meeting, get everyone set. We use Slack and things like that to communicate. So we're hybrid, but we also run a lot of events for clients. So we're constantly meeting up and coming up with ideas. So it's very much kind of a new approach for me, right, to running it.
How does it work with the subscription? Because I mean, I can imagine you have, I don't know which company you are working with, but you have probably the subscription model from this company, and then you can go in and
Yeah.
leave, and they charge you based on how much time you spent there, or you have like a flat rate for a month, or how does it work?
Yeah, so with the place we're in right now, it works with an annual membership. So we buy an
Hmm.
annual membership for the London-based people. What's good about that is I can come in as their guest, so it makes it easier. So, you know, the company's bought them this membership, and then I come in as the guest. And then with our other co-working space, we have dedicated desk, so that's monthly, more expensive, but it
Hmm.
just means that I mean, in here we know we come in and it's not massively busy, so we always get a spot and we can always work together. But you're very much out in a communal space, right? So we sometimes book private rooms as well, so where we can just get a bit of privacy, have clients come in and out, meet them, stuff like that.
Nice. And I mean, you're quite flexible with this model. I mean, you can scale up easily, you can scale down easily. And you mentioned you work with Slack. What other tools do you use for project management and so on? What is the tools that your agency is using?
Yeah, so we use a project management tool called Teamwork, and we've used loads.
Hmm.
So we've tried Monday.com, we used to use Trello, stuff like that. At the moment, we're using Teamwork. It integrates quite well with a lot of our other stuff. Then we use Google Business Suite. So a lot of our stuff is
Hmm.
just on Google Docs and things like that. So yeah, Teamwork, G Suite, and Slack are the main channels, really.
Yeah, I mean, for us is mainly ClickUp.
Mhm.
We tried a lot of. I don't know. I think we also tried Teamwork at one point. I think I spoke with a company in Berlin. I don't know if they are German or what company they are. We also tried this, if I remember correctly. Now we are at ClickUp. I'm still happy with it. And for the communication, we are on the other side. So you can call it on the dark side. We have a Microsoft.
Okay, yeah.
Um, so we work with Teams and the Microsoft Office, but it's kind of like the same, like Google, just the other big company,
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it's important. I mean, that the tools support this environment of hybrid working, so that you don't, for example, I think your colleagues, when a new colleague comes, they can just log in online. Everything is available. They don't have to install a tool and something, so they can work from day one with the tools, and they can also go out of Europe to Asia and so on, and they can just work from everywhere they want. I think this is really important in nowadays world.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think having that flexibility, the team definitely like it and they thrive off it, because I think when you trust people, give them a bit of autonomy, then they thrive. But if you're constantly overseeing everything they do, they kind of never learn to do it themselves. So it's kind
Yeah.
of and it's sink or swim, isn't it? I'll let you go try it, and we have one of our core values here is share failure. So
Mhm.
what we never want to do is someone to bury a mistake, because that just compounds, right? Leads to more mistakes. So we never punish a mistake. Everyone makes them. I've made
Same for us. I mean,
tons
I'm
of them.
like saying, hey, you can do mistake once, you can do it twice, but if you do it a third time and you didn't learn
No.
about it,
Yeah,
this is not okay. I mean, but
yeah,
I'm not like, as you said, we let mistakes happen, because only from mistakes we learn.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we both probably know from our journey to start a business, we had to do lots of mistakes and failures in order to learn from this experience and to know what is better and how to do it in a way that works out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're spot on. There's a big difference between making a mistake once or twice and then not having the like aptitude to realize why you've made that mistake and then change. And if you're just doing the same thing repeatedly, then at a certain point, then you've got to look at it and go, I either think you don't care or there's a lack of attention to detail. Because making a mistake 3 times, you're kind of like, now you're being a bit unfair. So
Yeah.
that is a different conversation, right? But I think some mistakes are easily done, and when if people are fearful that they're going to get punished for mistakes, they tend to make more, right? So they tend to be slightly more nervous about it. It doesn't create this culture of, oh, it's all right if I get it wrong. People are actually, I think they're more diligent in their approach, because they
Yes,
know
yes.
it's on them, right? And they thrive under having the independence. So I think it's an important approach, especially when you're virtual, when you're hybrid.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. And we are now at mistakes. So, what would you say? What were some of the most common mistakes you made in your entrepreneurial journey, and maybe what lessons did you take out from this?
Yeah. How long have you got? Because
I mean, we're
you
talking
could.
now 15 minutes. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe tell
You.
me about your most common mistakes, maybe the big three. I
Yeah.
mean, the
Yeah.
biggest three
Yeah.
mistakes you did in your journey, and what
Yeah.
did you took out from them?
Yeah. I mean, I could probably write a book on it. To be honest, in terms of
Hmm.
mistakes I've made, but the three main ones, I think, the first is hiring a team. I think hiring is one of the most difficult things for me in building a high performance team. So a team that can deliver without
Hmm.
me and without me having to oversee too much, right? So they are independent and they thrive with that. And I've made so many mistakes in terms of hiring. So I've, you know, one of the first employees I ever hired only lasted 5 days. So
Wow,
yeah,
this is a good record.
yeah, I
How did
know.
you reach this 5 days, or what do you think was the reason why it only lasted 5 days?
Um, there was so many factors that at play, but I think that it always start with myself and what I got wrong. I got wrong in terms of setting expectations of the role,
Mhm.
and not being clear. So she came from a very well funded startup into a micro agency at the time where she was just
Okay.
working with two co-founders. So
Yeah.
for her, it was a massive culture shock. Then there was the onboarding process. Nowadays we have this robust onboarding process, right? They spend time
Yeah.
with everyone in the team. We do full onboarding of like our vision, our mission, our culture,
Yeah.
all of this good stuff. So I think at the time I wasn't well set up, didn't go through a really robust hiring process in terms of nowadays we do different stages, right?
Mhm.
We monitor different key points throughout the hiring process. So we'll do a psychometric test to see what their way of working is. We do an exercise we call the personal brand exercise, where they have to pitch us a business idea based on a passion or hobby
That
and give
sounds
us the
interesting. Maybe you can send me some links that we can share in the
yeah.
description about it, because I think some of the viewers and listeners right now, they are really curious about the tools that you are using, because I think lots of have to struggle with hiring.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the best things we do is we ask people to, when they submit their CV and cover letter, we say
Mhm.
your subject line has to be a certain thing when you email us, because otherwise we might miss it for a start. But also, what we're measuring is their attention to detail. So if you can't read to the bottom of the job description and put the right subject line in, you probably haven't read the job description well enough to apply for that job, which sounds very
Nice
brutal,
one.
but
Yeah,
we
but
get,
it's a good one. I mean, this is exactly how you get performance guys, because
yeah,
you know for sure they have attention to detail. Nice
for
one.
sure, for sure. And, our last role hiring here in London, we got 300 applicants.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're a small team. Hiring costs a lot, it takes a lot of time. So we need ways to filter and filter quickly to get to the right people that we
Yeah.
want to spend face-to-face time with. So hiring was a massive one for me. I've learned the hard way. I've worked with business coaches on how to structure it, how to find the right people. I always bring a member of the team in with me, and I never give them my opinion. I always ask them first, what was your first thoughts on that individual? Because I
Yeah.
know I'll influence them if I speak. So we use that as our hiring process. The other one I've learned is having a point of difference. So there's you can be better than people, but clients don't actually care. You need to be different. So becoming the commercial collaborations agency, it makes it so much easier. When I go into pitches now, people are like, oh, it's really interesting. That's a different approach. I haven't quite heard that approach before. So when they've heard five of the same pitches and you come in with something a bit different, you've got
Yeah.
their attention. And in the
For sure.
past, a mistake I made was not working hard enough on positioning, for sure.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done it earlier, because I'd be making a lot more money, to be honest. And yeah, and I guess the third one, to be honest, I can't think off the top of my head, but
That's okay.
those
I
two
mean,
are the
you
major
you
ones.
you shared already some great things, and honestly, we could do another podcast just about the hiring.
Yeah, of
What I
course.
understood, I mean, you seem like you learned a lot of lessons there, and you streamlined and made your process as efficient as possible. I mean, with 300 applicants, you you need to be efficient. I mean, if
Yeah, yeah,
you select your team and you want to pick out the high performers from it, um, but sounds amazing, and I'm really curious when you share the links with me. What you just shared with the
for sure.
test that you are doing, and the other one was the second one was with the how did you say, with the brand?
The personal brand, yeah. So
Yeah.
we give them, we basically we keep it deliberately really vague. So They all email us because they're very high attention to detail individuals. So only the final stage people receive this task. And they all email us and they say, should I do a PowerPoint? Should I do this? Should I do that? And we just respond and say, hey, it's up to you. Do what you think's best. And what happens is you get this ridiculous like variety of different presentations, right? From PowerPoints to people bringing in props and people just sitting there and talking, and there's no right or wrong answer. So we're not measuring your presentation style, we're not measuring how good your idea is. What we're looking at, which most people miss the point of, is, are you a marketer because you've actually gone and worked out things like your target market, your go-to-market strategy. If things aren't working, what do you do differently? Things like that. So you can really grasp how someone's brain works. And then when you question them around it, you can see how well they can think on their feet, right? Because they've come in with this polished presentation, then you've thrown a curveball at them and you go, okay, but that's marketing, right? That's how it works. It's constant curveball. So yeah.
It's a great approach. I mean, it sounds really, really awesome. This process that you figured out, and it seems to work. I mean, probably the other employees lasted longer than 5 days.
Yeah. So Chloe's been with me for 5 years now. So we've started really getting it right. We've got a really good team now and that's what I'm proudest of, is the team and how they execute, and how they can execute without me. I can trust them, I can leave them to it.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
this
is
is
great.
this is the most important thing for me. It's Alexandra, that was my first employee, and I can fully trust her. She's also like shareholder of the company because she helped me to build up this company, and I can fully trust her, which is really important because you also want to have some vacation, or maybe something is happening and you can't be there, so you need somebody that can take over. And for the others, I mean, for the other employees, you need to trust them that they do their job. And this is the most important thing in order to build a sustainable company, because if your employees is leaving after just a few months, all this money, this knowledge transfer, this effort you put in it's going out of the window, and you have to start again. And it's for a small company, I mean, I know what you mean. It's a really big process, and you need to invest a lot of time and energy and money in it to do this over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. And you're spot on. It's time, it's money, and also
Yeah.
it's draining. It is tiring. And I think, even the interview process, right? We interviewed here in London. We had back-to-back presentations. The problem with that is we did 5 in a day. And by the end of the day, you haven't done any work. You haven't spoken to any of your clients. You haven't made any sales. You haven't done all of the fundamentals. And you're still consumed with who was better. Let's try and work it out. Let's sleep on it. It's a really difficult process. It's so hard to get right.
Yeah, I totally get you. And but I'm glad you figured this out.
Yeah, maybe,
um
I'm not saying I'm 100%,
Of
but,
course not.
you know,
I mean, you're still figuring it out, but I
yeah,
mean, you
yeah,
figured out a better way how to keep employees longer than five
for
days,
sure, for sure.
which is important. Um, yeah, I think we can go on talking and talking,
Yeah.
but I think we fulfilled now 1 hour. So I don't know if our podcast listeners are already tired. So, but I would be
Yeah,
really
fair enough.
happy if we maybe can make another session, because I think you have still more things to share from your journey. I want to thank you for this interesting lesson about you, your company, about your insights today. And how can our listeners and viewers find you online?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. And to the listeners who have stayed listening for this long, if they want to connect with me, find me on LinkedIn. So, find Henry McIntosh or 2112 Marketing on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, just add a note, say you listen to this podcast, because I tend not to accept when someone just connects. Like if you add a personal note, I'm definitely going to accept whoever you are. So feel free to reach out and say hello.
Yeah, just put your name here and just mention RE7 Talks, so Henry knows from where it came. And yeah, thank you to be my guest here in the show, and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.